Hands.
Welcome everyone. This is a segment we want to welcome in Joe Salamone. He's the Executive Director of the Long Island Coalition Against Bullying. And Joe, first of all, what motivated you to start this nonprofit organization?
Well, first, thanks for having me tonight, Howie. I was bullied from the 6th grade to pretty much around 11th grade. I had moved from North Babylon to Deer Park, and I moved between the summer between 5th and 6th grade, so right away I was the new kid, and I had everything from being taken out to play manhunt in the woods behind our house and being left there to the being shoved into lockers all by the same group of kids. Of course, the verbal abuse was there. I would have my backpack dumped out throughout the bus almost on a daily basis, and then I was the last stop on the bus route, so I would be able to go and pick up all my stuff, just before I got off the bus. One time in particular, they had gone into one of the pouches and taken my glasses, and for about a week or so, I didn't have my glasses, so I was going to bed early every night. That was pretty much when I decided to tell my parents what was happening, only because my mother now wanted to take me to the doctor because she wanted to know why I kept having headaches every night. So I finally told her, the whole route with talking to the school. Unfortunately, I had a principal at the time that was part of the problem, not the solution. He would use phrases when I would walk into his office, is your mommy gonna call me now? So he was more, more patronizing than he was helpful. And then the catalytic event for, really why I decided to start the organization was in 2013, I was in the waiting room of Good Samaritan Hospital, and I saw a special needs individual being bullied by a couple of kids that were in the waiting room. And my grandmother tells me that being Sicilian and a Taurus, I'm probably the worst combination in a guy because I have a little bit of a temper. So I thought I figured I could either get really angry about what was going on, or I could try to channel that same energy into something that might do a little bit more positive good than just yelling and getting angry at a couple of kids. Unfortunately, me and everybody else in the room didn't end up doing anything. That family moved to another area of the waiting room. But I called a couple of friends and family members at the time, and I said, this is what my idea is. Always had an interest in nonprofits, and we, 5 years later, the Long Island Coalition Against Bullying is a 501c3, and we have a lot of programs in the community, both to help prevent and stop some of the issues from going on, as well as helping families who are already, in the throes of it and dealing with it. So.
One of the, it's been a real passion of ours, but the real motivating force for us is 2 years ago here in Long Beach, a 13-year-old boy named Brendan Carr was being bullied, and one day he left Gino's Pizza and 3 kids followed him home. They beat him up right before he got to his home. He went up to his room and took his own life, just 13 years old, and from that day it's become such a strong passion, because when it hits right in your own backyard, that really hits home. And I would say that I think is probably one of the goals of your organization, is to prevent horrible stories like that.
Sure. I remember going to Brendan's wake. It was the first wake in all the years that we've been in existence that I went to. It was the first Long Island example that was most prominent. In fact, I had given a speech at our gala a week before, and I had warned everybody that was in the audience, where we're talking about examples of Daniel Fitzpatrick in Staten Island, which happened a couple of weeks before Brendan. And I said to everybody, this is not just something that happens somewhere else. It can happen here. And then, a week and a half or so later, Brendan took his life. In the year since that happened, there have been 6 other wakes that I have gone to, where they were all suicides, and the precipitating factor contributing to the suicide was bullying. So it's definitely reaching the level of being an epidemic here. You know, there's really nobody who is not touched by it in some way. You know, whether you're the parent of a kid who's going through it, it could be your neighbor, it could be anybody. You know, if we all are more keyed into the issue, I'm sure every single person has either been through it or knows somebody who's going through it.
Absolutely. To my right is Mayor Minch. He's been with me for about 5 or 6 years, and I found out through sources in Long Beach what Mayor had been dealing with, and I took him under my wing. And Mayor grew up, never met his father. His mom is developmentally disabled, and he came to Long Beach at a young age, and right now he's going to tell you his story.
Hey guys, my name is Mayor. Like I said, I've been with Howie for 5-6 years. You're going to be hearing my segment later on, do with the local business in Long Beach. A lot has happened. For me, it started from 3rd grade, ended up entering till 12th grade of high school. My first big incident when I was 8 years old, it was my first month into Long Beach, and 2 kids, local, like they're from here, and they threw me a flight of stairs. Ended up in a coma for 3 weeks. 8 years old, was in the hospital for about a month and a half in the hospital. The day started out, it was sunny. I remember February 3rd was a cold Wednesday, and just being new to Long Beach, not even a month, 2 months in here in Long Beach, and I remember going to get my school book from like the 3rd floor, because from gym I had to go back to the 1st floor, so I was like, okay, let me go up there. They followed me up to the 3rd floor. As soon as I walked back down, they came from behind one of the doors, and they pushed me a flight of like concrete stairs. I ended up in a coma, like I said, for 3 weeks, and I still have the scars to prove it today. If you guys ever want to see it, it's right here on my head. 35 stitches on my head, and I've been through it. I've been having people throwing stuff at me, cursing me out, saying that we wish you die, we wish that you didn't exist, and you don't matter to our school, and you don't matter to the community of Long Beach, and everything. I'm shooken up today just for sharing the story, and like you see the microphone shaking. It's like, I want to say that, like, if you are going through it, try to like buddy up with your friend and try to like go through it. If you need help, you have this guy right here who is making a difference in Long Island, and I would love to be a part of your organization. And with the collaboration of my business, I own a graphic tee business, make a graphic tee for complimentary t-shirt for your company and your foundation. And it's all about, trying to stick together and knowing that like you can always find help. My principal, it's different than from your principal, was the cause. My principal, I can tell him thank you. He was like the best principal I know. His name was Nicholas J. Restivo. He was a high school principal at Long Beach from 2003 to 2009. And like just everything escalated. I was slammed onto school lockers. I was slammed in gym and always made fun of. It was a mess.
And Mayor, this lasted from elementary all the way through high school, and I remember you've said in the past that really your best friends and the only people you can count on was your special needs teachers, and they made a huge difference in your life because the students were brutal to you.
Yes, they were. Like I said, I can give a shout out to 4 people that thankfully helped me. One was Maria Perron, Matthew Morand, Nicholas Joe Restivo, which was Long Beach high school principal. Now he's director of a math Olympiads in Long Island, and another, I forgot the 4th one, but they were the 4 core that helped me get through it. And it was difficult, like from being in a coma, it was, I don't know.
All right, well, thank you for sharing, and let's hear for some other people I chose to be on the panel. Scott Bartolomeo. Let's hear your feedback on it.
Hey guys. Hey guys, how are you? First of all, let me just say on behalf of everybody that it is really hard to get up here and talk, especially when you've been like bashed and humiliated and bullied throughout your years. So this is definitely hard. I feel like I'm at like an AA meeting or something. But so thank you. I mean, I can go into a lot of detail about how I was bullied. Just to give you an overview, the first time I was bullied was in first grade. By my actual teacher. I'm left-handed, and I was slapped on the hand with rulers, and to the point that pencils broke in between my fingers. That was just the start of my bullying. After that, I do identify as a gay male now. I endured a tremendous amount of. I was in first grade, second grade, and I was treated like I had a disease that was contagious. And that was stemming not from the students, but it was stemming from the parents that were telling their students. I wasn't allowed to pee in the bathroom with other boys. I had to wait until everybody else went into class, and I was always late. I was constantly in trouble with my teachers. So, you know, bullying can come from a lot of different facets. If you know somebody that's being bullied, they're probably being bullied in more than one way, probably not just the obvious way. That's just kind of food for thought. You know, let me think for a second. Yeah, I'm fine. Let me just collect my thoughts. You know, so my parents found out that I was being bullied, and this is probably also a child's biggest fear. So my parents went up to the school and talked to the principal and the teachers and pulled the students' parents into rooms and stuff. It made it 1,000 times worse. On me. Like the children that got reprimanded by their parents, like tortured me 10 times more. So if somebody is being bullied, you know, you got to look for over behavioral issues in general with a student, like, you know, somebody that's being reclusive or to themselves or something like that, because, you know, telling my parents was like my biggest fear, and it really ended up being one of the biggest mistakes because they didn't understand how to handle it through the correct channels. You know, later on, it trailed me through life. I mean, you know, not to go too long, but, you know, when I was 14 or 15 and my parents suspected I was gay, I was taken to a lot of different doctors. I was almost sent to those type of like rehabilitative camps. I was lectured and scolded by all different doctors and psychologists and condemned that I had a disease and I needed to change my life. Anyway, I don't know, that's like a big tangent. I can go on forever. I think the big thing to also understand though is that there's a lot of, it's like getting hit with like a curse that you didn't ask for, and there's a lot of PTSD, kind of very similar to somebody that comes, like a soldier or somebody that comes back from war. You know, people need help rehabilitating their lives. It's taken me years to undo the psychological damage and to have the courage to even be here today. This is probably my first time ever publicly speaking about me being bullying, and you know, it's about. I'm sorry, I went too long.
No, I want to, Mayor and Scott, I really, both of you have a lot of courage for sharing, and Joe wants to jump in and add something.
Just to feed off that part about the PTSD, you know, I'm going to be 31 in April, and I still have lasting things that I struggle with every single day. You know, I have tremendous anxiety issues. I hate speaking in public, but you know, if I'm going to do what I'm doing, I have to be willing to accept it and just kind of push through it. You know, it gets better, but you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, kind of go along with it, which is part of what we do as an organization, is kind of promote that kids who are being bullied would benefit from talking to a mental health therapist, a social worker, a psychologist. You know, it's ironic to me that we get these frantic calls from parents all the time that their kids are going through such tough times, and then when we recommend that, you know, you know, we're pretty much well networked with most social workers, so maybe 15-20 minutes from a kid's house, they would be able to get to a place where they can talk to, and we pay for them to go. So, you know, we're offering the money to go, we're taking that part away, we're giving the referral, and then all of a sudden, well, it's not that bad. You know, there's such a stigma around trying to get mental health for things that, you know, when you are, fast forward all these years later, you're 31 and you still have issues that potentially could have been resolved then. I didn't go to a therapist then. My parents couldn't have afforded it then. But, you know, it probably could have helped then, you know, but there's a stigma associated to it that has to go away, and people have to understand that there is a tremendous amount of damage that gets done there that needs to be kind of disengaged and worked with.
Absolutely. And by the way, if anyone in the audience wants to share, by all means come up and the microphone is yours. I mean, our show is always an open forum, so again, if anyone in the audience wants to share, by all means, feel free to join us. And now I want to get the high school perspective from teens dealing with the issue of bullying, and so I'm going to pass it to Lexi.
Okay. I guess kind of because I do music and stuff, people always thought like different about it. I mean, we kind of share like the same thing. We don't really like anybody in our high school. It's not that. I mean, it's just like high school kids are just mean, you know, if you're like different or whatever. I don't really have any crazy like huge stories like you guys. They were very inspiring. I didn't think people would go like that far, like shoving in lockers and kids taking their own lives. That's crazy. But, you know, just doing music and doing what I do, people always thought I was weird, like not going to like parties, drinking, you know. I don't know, I guess that's it. If you want to say anything, add to it.
I mean, they basically just said, you know, everything I really wanted to say. And it's really not easy for some of these people, you know, like Mayor, to come out with these kind of stories. It's really, really not easy. But I will say this, you know, if you see somebody getting bullied, if you're in high school like me, or even just anywhere, if you see something, say something. Because if you're just bystanding, you're only helping the bully. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's true.
Joe, I want to get into a couple of issues that are very important. We've had the Long Island Coalition Against Bullying. We had the Long Beach Anti-Bullying Club on the show. And one of the issues that always comes up, and I'd like to see your perspective on it, is that one of the areas where kids really get bullied is on the buses. You know, because generally, you know, my feeling on this is that the bus driver is there to transport the children safely to school. He can't be a disciplinarian, so I always kind of feel the school should have a monitor to, prevent that bullying. What's your feedback on the bullying that takes place on buses?
The bus in particular being one of the places that was like, my hell for a while. There is definitely the argument out there that we should have physical people monitoring what's going on the buses aside from the bus driver. And then, the question that I never really get an honest answer on from a lot of different people is whether or not the cameras that are in buses are actually working. And I don't mean working meaning, catching people in the act. I mean working meaning, are they actually functioning? The excuses that we got when I was a kid and we started looking for my glasses when I finally told my parents they were gone was the camera wasn't working then, so there's nothing that we can do to try to find the people who might have done it. I know who did it, but that wasn't enough. And then a couple of days later, the story would change to not only that it was working, but the tapes get erased within 24 hours. So if you don't report it within 24 hours, whatever happened that day is gone. So from that perspective, it might have a value to somebody else being, a completely impartial party being on the bus actually watching, because you're right, the bus driver's got enough of a responsibility to make sure that the kids are getting safely from point A to point B. We did have a couple of drivers in my history on the buses where they would actually pull over if there was too big of an issue, or they was getting too loud, or there was something going on the bus, and he would pull over on the side of the bus, side of the road, and the bus wouldn't leave until everybody was seated the way they were supposed to be, not making a sound, and we would sit there. And there were a lot of times that a lot of people were late getting home, and it was because and we told our parents, they'd call, and the school supported what the bus driver did. The bus is definitely an issue. A lot of districts will have issues with putting somebody on the bus because, who's going to pay for it, and then you get into all that kind of a scenario. And a lot of times school districts aren't paying for their own buses anymore, so whatever bus department or bus outfit they're using will have to pay for another individual. So it really, like so many things in life, it comes down to, the dollars and cents of a problem. So it's definitely an issue that needs addressing in some way.
Absolutely. In your opinion, Joe, a couple other things I want to bring up. In your opinion, are the schools, a general question, doing enough to prevent bullying?
In 5 years, I could say that there are schools that are doing enough. There are schools that are doing well more than enough, and then there are schools who are doing nowhere near enough. It really is a varying degree. Obviously, it would be inappropriate to name certain districts, but there are districts that plain outright deny that there's bullying going on in their district whatsoever, not a question. We've approached districts and we have been told, we don't have a bullying problem, and I respond somewhat in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. I ask them questions. Do you have kids? Do you run a school? Yes. Do you have kids who go to that school? Yes. Well, then you have a problem. The only problem you have is whether or not you're admitting you have one. There's two totally different things. A misconception out there is that schools don't do enough generally. I talk to families, several families, on a daily basis, so it really runs the gambit as far as the actions that schools take. But it comes down to an understanding of what is and is not bullying, which feeds into whether or not a school kind of behaved correctly or not. I had an issue this week with a family where a young lady was spit on by one of her classmates. This happened 2 weeks before I was on the phone with her, and my question to her was, did an altercation with this kid or any other kid happen before this incident in question? And the answer was no. There was no prior history. And has anything since this incident happened with any kids in particular since that happened? And the answer was no. We have to understand that kids are still going to be mean, and there are still going to be unkind things that kids do to one another, just like there are unkind things that adults do to one another. It doesn't necessarily mean that right there, right then and there, is an act of bullying. Bullying is a repetitious and habitual thing. Everybody, all the three of us who shared specific stories, there's a history there. There was a constant targeting. Having no history and nothing happening since is not necessarily bullying. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. That could be where it starts, so it definitely needs to be watched. But if time goes by and nothing happens, and that was in itself an isolated incident, that's not bullying. So when you go to a principal and you want to, lead the charge that your kid is being bullied, and there's really no history to support it, and that's the answer that is given to you from a school, it's not because they don't want to deal with it. It's because by definition, in that example you're using, it really isn't bullying. Could it become bullying? Sure, but in that particular instance, it's not. And we have the slight upper hand because we have no skin in the game. We're not here to support schools. We're not here to directly take the side of the family either. There are always two sides to every story. So when I explain that, it's a little easier for families to accept coming from an impartial party than it would be if a school is trying to explain it, because a lot of people right away think that a school is just trying to CYA. That's all they're out there to do. But so it's a loaded question that some schools are, going back to it, some schools are doing enough, some are doing more than enough, and others really have a lot of work to do.
Okay. Mayor wants to follow up with that.
Yeah, like when he says people are not kind to one another, there's one person that I know when I watch her show, her name is Ellen DeGeneres, and she always reminds people on TV is this quote. It says, guys, don't forget, be kind to one another. Every show she ends with this saying, be kind to one another. That's a big saying. Don't be mean to another person, because karma will hit you. And like I said, I speak for myself, and I would say that people that bully people, I understand that there's problems at home, that they take it out on us, but don't take it on us. We didn't do nothing to, I'm speaking for the person that got bullied. We didn't do anything to deserve it. Just remember, this gentleman said over here, if you see something, say something. Don't forget, it's just being kind to one another. It's not the most hardest thing. It's not rocket science. Just waking up every morning, smile, just say that I love me, I love the world, and just give the world passion that you love about them as more than you love about yourself.
Great point, Mayor. And we're in a different age over the years. I gotta believe one of the big problems today is the cyberbullying. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think cyberbullying is probably worse than the physical bullying that goes on.
It's definitely a problem. The issue is, going back to when I was going through it, the worst day was when I would get, something would happen to me in school or home, and whoever was there to bear witness to it would be as bad as it got, and whoever they may have told. In today's world, you can have an altercation with a group of kids, 3 or 4 kids, whatever the scenario is, or one-on-one, and it gets videotaped and sent to whoever or posted wherever, and 5,000 people can see it within an hour. So there's no way to escape it today where, all I had to do was go home and shut the door and I would know that I'm safe until the next day. In the case of now, you can go home and you can close the door, but in the back of your head, you're still wondering what is on Facebook, who's retweeting it, who's Snapchatting what, who's Instagramming what. It's not necessarily what they post either. We dealt with a girl a couple of weeks ago that was getting repeated death threats sent to her in private messages on Instagram. It had nothing to do with posts, so it wasn't it wasn't something that somebody else could have seen. It was what she was receiving privately. What I say usually as a suggestion is, for especially younger kids, parents have to have an engagement in what's going on their kid's phone. They don't be afraid to take it and look at it. What apps are they downloading? It's not an invasion of privacy. There's a certain level, a certain age, they don't have that element of privacy. If we're all not willing to take a certain level of responsibility in what goes on, there's really never going to be a solution to it. We all have to we all have skin in the game, so to speak, especially when it comes to cyberbullying.
Absolutely. Joe, we're going to wrap up this segment, but for people out there, how can they get a hold of you, and what should students or parents do to contact you if they are going through getting bullied?
Our website is www.licab.org. The phone number is 516-777-7709. You can find us on Facebook. You can send an email to help, HELP, at licab.org. And that goes for anybody. If it's a student who's reporting it on behalf of another student, or if it's parents calling about your own child, one of the first things that we'll do is we let whoever is calling just tell us about everything that's going on. No interruptions. It's just an impartial ear. And then first thing we do is send a smile package to them. You tell us about what they like to do, usually targeted more towards younger grades. High school kids, it's a little hard to send something in a box that's going to make them feel better. But middle school and younger, if you tell us about what they like, their hobbies, special interests, we actually will go out. A team of people goes out. They find things in the store. It could be specific things we were told, or just things we use our imagination, and we build those packages and send them to the individual child. Like I said before, we pay for therapy for the families or the child in particular. And I always get asked the question when it comes to the therapy, would we ever pay for a bully to go to therapy? And the answer to that is, of course. Except you need a lot more buy-in in order to acknowledge that there's a bully that needs to go to therapy. Which in 5 years we've never had that happen. So there's a lot of different things we do. Of course, we talk to schools, etc. Community workshops. But again, just to echo what we've all set up here, if you see something, say something. If you know something, say something. There's no shame in helping somebody out, and the issue revolves around respect. There are a lot of people that I don't like, and there are a lot of people that don't like me, but we also have a mutual understanding that just because we don't like each other doesn't mean that we have to disrespect each other. And when you go out of your way to be mean and nasty to somebody and go to the extent of bullying, it's because you don't think that you have to respect somebody just because you don't like them, or you perceive that there's a difference, and that's wrong.
All right, Joe Salamone, the Long Island Coalition Against Bullying, thank you so much, and I hope to have you back on the show, and we'll keep the dialogue moving. Thanks to Mayor, Scott, Lexi, and Ryan for sharing. Hope you got a lot out of it. And again, if you see something, say something. And we're going to continue. This is 3 things we're very passionate about: raising awareness, preventing bullying, preventing suicide, and dealing with a drug crisis here in Long Island. So these are topics that we're going to continue to raise awareness. And the more we raise awareness, if we help one person, it's all worth it.